Greetings, 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 greetings. I am King Clifford Jefferson, a Senator Godfrey, the fifth Caliban Jew, son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know here as the King of Peace, or the Vicar of Christ, or Melchizedek. It is October 12th, 2025, which will be equivalent to the birth year 2975. I greet you in the name of all the kings and queens who have come before me. I greet you in the name of all the predecessors, the heirs and successors. I greet you in the name of my Queen Sister Goverson from the House of Goverson. I greet you in the name of all those who are striving to get an understanding of what it is that we are here and called to do. Today's lecture is called Slavery Was Caused by Illegal Fiction. Then parts of if slavery was should have been titled if slavery was caused by illegal fiction, then freedom will come through a legal fiction as well. Correct. Okay. So if slavery was caused by legal fiction, then freedom will come through a legal fiction. Once again, if slavery was caused by illegal fiction, then freedom will come through a legal fiction. All right. We all should understand what the term means by way of what we call a legal fiction. So without further ado, let's get started with this marvelous lesson. Like, share, subscribe, as well as donate if you can to the Third Timothy English Church of England, or Clifford Jeb at Gmail. Parts of Clifford. I have a hard time saying my cash app. $ Clifford Jefferson L. So if you're able to donate green common sockets, you could donate it to the Third Timothy English Church of England, or $Clifford Jefferson L in lieu of free and common sockets. This is a beautiful lesson that I have prepared for you all in regards to truly understanding what it is that we are called to do here at our establishment, our corporate body known as the English Church of England, our corporate body known as the English Church of England, right? So I'm giving the brothers and sisters a couple of minutes to come on in, if you're willing and able to. Give everyone a couple of minutes to come on in. The popcorns, you're going to need it. Whatever you need, because you're definitely going to need it today. All right, let's get started. slavery was caused by a legal fiction, then freedom will come through a legal fiction. Before we discuss how uh, freedom was supposed to come through a legal fiction as a result of us being enslaved by a legal fiction, let's first define what a legal fiction is and what its purpose was designed for. Okay, very important as in regards to us, the Third Keeping Church of England, which was a reformation of the English Church, whose authorities or corporate powers fall under what we call the English crown. Okay, under our corporate powers, under our corporate body, under our corporate personhood. Okay, as a legal fiction. Okay, not fiction, not nonfiction, but a legal fiction. Okay, because we understand that what we call nonfiction is what we call our reality. None of us really understand that our reality, which we call nonfiction, came from a nonfiction. If it didn't come from a nonfiction, a nonfiction. Okay, so nonfiction which means real. Okay, so our nonfiction, which we call our reality, came from a fiction, which means not real. Okay, our reality, as we see it today, came about as a result of a fiction. Okay, a fiction, something that was not real, created what we call our reality today. Okay, disguised as a legal fiction, but has some legal presumptionability about it based upon the authority of how it acquired its ability to become a legal presumption at law. Okay, very important to understand these terms if you're going to understand this lesson. Okay, never going to hear anything like this anywhere else. Okay, very important. Slavery is the legal fiction that a person is property. Once again, slavery is a legal fiction. We know a legal fiction, which is something that is considered true at law, but no, but the fact remains that it is in fact false. So a legal fiction is something that is considered true at law, but it's agreed upon that is in fact false. Okay, the only reason why the legal fiction was created was for some legal purpose. Okay, so slavery is a legal fiction that a person is property. Legal fictions is something that is not real, but is taken for legal purposes to be real at law. Okay, so slavery is the legal fiction that a person is property. Okay, a legal fiction that a person is property. 1 second. Corporate personhood is a legal fiction, which we know a legal fiction is something that is false, but it's considered to be, in the eyes of law, a fact. Okay, which is a fact cannot be rebutted as a result of its falsity is being accepted as a fact for legal purposes. So once again, slavery is a legal fiction that a person is property. So under legal fiction, as persons, we became what we call property. As a result of a legal fiction that claimed us as property, that would be the corporate personhood, the corporate body, and its corporate laws. Okay, that's what is determined a legal fiction or a juristic person. You might call it a straw man. Okay, that's what you call it. Nonetheless, a legal fiction is something at law is taken to be a fact, even though it's false. Okay, and it was agreed upon based upon the creation of a legal fiction of its false as a result of its falsity being accepted. It cannot be challenged in a court of law. Okay, so slavery is a legal fiction that a person is property versus corporate personhood, which states that which is also a legal fiction that property is a person. So we see a distinction between the legal fiction as refers to slavery and the legal fiction as refers to corporate personhood. And in slavery, the legal fiction is that persons were deemed property. And corporate personhood, we see a legal fiction is property then becomes persons. Okay? Very important for you to understand that concept. When we talk about legal fiction, okay, we're talking about corporate powers, corporate body, corporate personhood. Okay? Corporate personhood. Very important. So no longer look at yourself as a natural person, okay, the nonfiction. Look at yourself as the fiction because you're living in a world of fiction created by what presumed to be a legal fiction, but has some legal presumption at law, which can be challenged at any time based upon the presumption at law and its assumption that it has some legal authority to act as a legal fiction, which is accepted at law as a fact and it cannot be challenged based upon its falsity. Okay? Very important. So once again, slavery is a legal fiction that a person is considered what? Property. Versus corporate personhood, which is also a legal fiction, which states that a property is now considered persons. Okay? All right, now we got that understood. We can move forward. We underestimate the power of a legal fiction. Legal fictions versus other succession methods. Okay, we have a lot of stories that are considered fiction, and we know fiction means not real, based upon how our birthright or inheritance was supposed to come, based upon something that's considered fiction. Okay, and our reality, which we call nonfiction, because nonfiction means real versus fiction, which means not real. Okay, and our reality, majority of us presume to have some right of inheritance promised from some entity called a god, okay, which according to the religious world is fictitious, okay, not a legal fictitious person, but yet fictitious, not real. All, all, all of our stories that link to the history of our successorship, okay, is based upon a fiction, okay, a fiction, not a legal fiction, but a fiction, okay, and that brings about some legal presumption about its existence, okay. Very important to understand that in lieu of this lesson, okay. Legal fiction differs from other methods of gaining power in several key ways. Okay. And when we're talking about the legal fiction in regards to us, we're talking about how we inherit the right to become successors of those progenitors who set the right of our existence based upon what we call a legal fiction. Okay. Being applicable here in 2025. Okay. The purpose of a legal fiction is to be able to bring a law that are not being used or legislate that's not being used and be able to apply them in present day. And the reason why they're not being applied in present day based upon the legislative or the law, okay, is a result of the gap and the applicability of the legislative and those laws. The law we talk about in regards to our rights and inheritance, all right, based upon the kings, okay, which according to modern day are construed to be what we call fictions, okay, not real. According to majority of people's belief, we say that they are in fact real, okay, they're nonfiction. The reason why we say they are nonfiction is because there's case law to support it. There's legislation to support it. There's also statutes to support the existence of a legal fiction called a king, which is also a representation of the legal fiction called the crown, which is also a representation of the legal term called a corporation sole, which is also a legal fiction, which is also comes to what we call your certificate of corporation. Okay, and we know Lee versus Harrison said all corporate powers derive their authority from a sovereign grant, and that's usually through their certificate of corporation through the state in which they incorporated. Okay, and the state is in fact what? A legal fiction. If it's not a legal fiction, then it has some legal presumptionability about its existence. Okay? So when we look at our reality based upon its nonfiction state of our awareness, we must realize that it was built by a legal presumption that is calling themselves a legal fiction that has corporate powers, which came to a corporate body under a corporate personhood, which is the body of a legal fiction. Okay? Very important to understand that. Legal fiction versus other succession methods. Legal fiction differs from other methods of gaining power in several key ways. Methods. Description. Legal fiction creates a binding assumption within existing law to achieve a new legal reality which cannot be challenged at law. Why? Because the falsity of the falsehood has been accepted as fact in law, so it cannot be challenged. Okay? This is the power of a legal fiction, something that's not real but accepted for legal purposes to be real. Okay? That's one way. So, one way for successorship, whether you call yourself a king, okay? We call ourselves king because we know Jesus was called King of Kings, all right? We know Jesus is a fictitious story that's referenced throughout your Bible. Okay, we know that his father in heaven was presumed to be a fictitious story that's told in your Bible. Okay, the Bibles were written by non-fictions. Okay, something that was real, and those stories created by the non-fiction based upon the fiction has created our reality. Okay, which has nothing to do with the legal fiction that created the reality that was subject to do as non-fictions. Okay, very important. So legal fictions create a binding assumption at law within existing law. You hear that? Within existing law. So the laws already had to exist based upon the legal fiction when before it was created to create that legal fiction. As I said, Lee versus Harrison, all powers come from what? A corporate sovereign grant. Okay? Usually due to the certificate of corporation and which the state in which you were incorporated. Okay? And the state is what? A legal fiction as well. All right? At one time, it did not exist. It was created from what? One's mind. Let's move forward. Another way succession can come through what? An overthrow of an existing ruler by force. Okay? When one overthrows that was there prior, that meant that the corporate body that existed, meaning the corporate personhood, the corporate body, and the corporate powers are now replaced by some new corporate body, corporate personhood with their corporate powers. And this power is based upon conquest or co-op to overthrow. Okay? Very important. Then there's another way you can do it, a divine mandate saying that you claim a right by God. Okay? This is where your scriptures come in. All right? A divine right of kings. Okay? Very important to distinguish the four ways. We got three ways already. Legal fiction, conquest, and divine mandate. The only one left is through legislation. That's the only one left. Let's look at it. Mike, two of them. Elections. We got the other one, elections. The monarch is chosen by a small group of high-ranking nobles or electors. Okay? So you got legal fiction, conquest, divine mandate, and elections. What else do we have here? Okay? And the other one is by legislation. Right here. Acts of Parliament. A new law is passed that explicitly changes the rules of succession. For example, Parliament removed Edward VIII and enabled his abdication in 1936 by passing legislation. So we have 5 ways, brothers and sisters, that succession can come about. Okay, when we're talking about succession, we're talking about succession of an office or a tenure. This is called the crown, a legal fiction, which is held by another legal fiction called the king. That's why it's called crown land. Crown land is the which we're defining in a second. Okay, very important. So, in order for there to be an office, there must be the crown. That office is held by the king. That's known as a corporation sole. Okay, if that office is not being held, that office then that means office must be found. This is what we call the demise of the Crown Act. This was passed by Queen Anne in 1702. The office must be um, tenured by what we call primogeniture, which is also a legal fiction. Okay, primogeniture, based upon how we understand it, is also based upon legal fiction, because the office for that successor, i.e., male heir to inherit the throne, must be established through legal fiction as a result of the gap in the legislation and the gap in the law that cannot be applied as the corporate powers of the corporate body by the corporate personhood as a result of the new existing corporate personhood, under the corporate body, under corporate powers, which we call police powers. The eminent domain power, which is what? The power to take. Okay? Not the power to convey, but the power to take. So the Act of Parliament is a new law that passes that allows the application from one monarch to the next. Okay? Very, very, very important. All legal fictions. Okay? Part so. The key one is legal fictions. Okay? Because we created that method to make sure that the estates of inheritance will not be disfragmented or disintegrated as a result of what we call subinfeudation. The laws were passed to prevent subinfeudation to what we call queen of pentors as a result of their donors condition above. The law governing entail, law governing disentailment of fee entail versus fee simple estates, which is the power that results from the eminent domain power, what they call police powers, that all the states have as a result of their ability to be able to allow others to incorporate as legal fiction. This will be businesses, okay? This is where that sovereign term comes from, which is based on how we understand it is a legal presumption at law, because you are not, in fact, sovereign. Only sovereign is the people, okay? Very important. So with that, let's get moving. We're going to watch 2 videos, okay, brothers and sisters? 2 videos real quick. People claim to be descendants and have a right to inherit the land, but leave out the legal process of how the right to the inheritance was supposed to be conveyed to you. All right. What I'm going to show you is that they're not using the legal fiction, all right, in lieu of the so-called claim to legitimize their claim. They're using the right of what we call conquest, okay? The right of conquest. They're not using the Act of Parliament, okay? They're not using the divine right of kings, all right? Because those were those who created the body of politics to create the corporate powers. That would mean the laws that they use under the corporate body, under the corporate personhood, okay? The example we see here is based upon right of conquest, eminent domain power, okay, or police powers, okay? And the government that are already in place, which we know has some legal presumption that could be challenged, as we're going to see here, is going to be challenged, okay? But as a result of them lacking the knowledge that we have here at the English church, they're subject to what we call injectment, all right? So just check it out. Just look at it. Well, listen.
Or refusing to leave despite an eviction notice from the local council. They've been calling themselves the Kingdom of Kabul, a self-styled African tribe who are camping in the woodlands in the Scottish borders, or refusing to leave despite an eviction notice from the local council. They've been calling themselves the Kingdom of Kabbalah and have set up camp close to the town of Jedburgh. The deadline for them to move from the site is midday today. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis is there for us. Conor, it's such an extraordinary story, isn't it? Explain who this tribe are, where they've come from, and why they're living in the rather chilly, I imagine, surrounds of Jedburgh at the moment.
Yeah, good morning, Jane. This is certainly up there with one of the most bizarre tales that we will tell you today on Sky News. Welcome to the so-called Kingdom of Kubala, the place, the location here in the Scottish borders in the town of Jedburgh, where a self-proclaimed African tribe are here. They are saying they are reclaiming land taken from their ancestors 400 years ago, and they have set up camp. They have set up life here by all intents and purposes. You see the tents where the three members of this community have been living, and they call themselves the King, the Queen and the Handmaiden, three members of this community. And it has become somewhat of a spectacle here in Scotland over the past few months. Clearly, this is a very unusual sight anywhere, but certainly here in this small town of the Scottish borders has proved quite controversial. Let's get a sense as to why the so-called tribe are here. Let's speak to the man calling himself the King of the Kingdom of Kubala. Good morning. Thanks for your time on Sky News. What is the reason for you being here, sir?
The prophecy must be fulfilled. The reclaim of the land which belonged to our forefathers. I am the King of Kubala, and I have come to reclaim my heritage, the lost tribe and the lost land for my ancestors.
You're on land, though, that does not belong to you. It belongs to Scottish Borders Council. They want you out.
The land and the earth belongs to the Creator of the heavens and the earth. No one belongs to the earth apart from the Kingdom of Kubala. The skies, the earth is for the Kingdom of Kubala, and we have come to stay.
Hello, madam. You know, the council are saying that this cannot continue. You need to get off their land, and this is not something that is sustainable. What do you say in response to that?
We only follow the laws of the Creator who has given this land to us. It already belongs to us. It was the land of black people, Jacobites, 400 years ago, before they were deported from this land.
We have come to reclaim our heritage. Exactly. This is our land. No one should be able to tell us to leave this land which belongs to our forefathers. We are the true Jacobites. We are the Highlanders.
The law says, though, that you must leave.
The Creator.
Okay. So they are the true Jacobites, which means only can take you to believe that they are the children of Israelites, which I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying that they're not. But it must be based upon some legal and lawful way of conveyance from God that he speaks about, because God is fiction, okay? Fiction. We see in the preamble of New Jersey's Constitution, there's a conversation between God and his people, and they're speaking a language that's English, okay? The people are nonfiction, but God, who's speaking to them, is nonfiction as well, because they're speaking the same language. So if God is speaking to the people in the language that they can understand it, then that means that they're considered to be nonfiction people, because we speak English today, all right? But yet they reference this speaking God, which many refer to as nonfiction God, because the nonfiction God points up the fiction God, because the fiction God is a God that's not real. He's speaking about a fictitious God, a God that he cannot hear, see, feel, etc. Okay? This is God he's talking about. No disrespect to his God, but in reference to the land that they're referencing and to what we call Scotland borders, they're governed by laws, okay? He didn't use any laws created by the corporate personhood or the corporate body through the corporate powers of the Scottish Parliament or the Scottish Kings, okay? That was created through a corporate body called a legal fiction. Even though it's false, it's accepted to be a fact in law for legal purposes, okay? Which cannot be rebutted. As you can see here, they have used a method called right of conquest, or what we call squatters' rights, okay? It's all a result of what we call the eminent domain powers of what we call adverse possession, okay? Adverse possession. They cannot prove that, in fact, God gave them that estate inland that they call an inheritance. Okay? Very important that we all understand that from a legal standpoint. Okay? Because they're being summoned to court to prove their claim of how it was conveyed to them as the lawful heir, going all the way back to the biblical time dealing with the Jacobites. Okay? Very important. We understand this.
Is who we listen to. There is no man-made law which is bigger than the creator of the heavens and the earth. His laws is our precepts and what we walk with.
So you are planning to stay here for the foreseeable future. You won't be leaving, is that right?
Our tribes are coming. The rest of the people are coming from all the four corners of the earth, from Trinidad and Tobago, from Jamaica, from Suriname, and they are coming back to their own land. This is the land of the people, not for Edomites. This is the land for black people, and they are coming back home.
Let me just speak to the lady here.
He said they
You
back home. I
are
agree with
calling
everything he's
yourself
saying.
the handmaiden
Let
in
me
this
talk about
camp. What does
what
that
they
mean?
call
What's your
Europe
role and
today,
why are
Great
you
Britain,
here?
I
or
am
we
the
call
handmaiden.
England today,
And
now
my
called
role
America.
is to do all the housework, most of the housework. Obviously, we all put in every area. But if the chores aren't done, if the tent isn't clean, if the camp, if everything is not where it needs to be, I am held responsible. In the kingdom, in the palace, if everything is not tidy, if everything is not where the queen wants it to be, then I am responsible for training the maids and the handmaids.
Is that something?
As a result of them not knowing the true history of England and Scotland, this is the conditions that they're subject to. Okay? As a result of them not knowing the legal ramifications of the application of the corporate powers from the corporate body, which is the corporate personhood. Okay? If you understood that corporate power from the corporate body, from the corporate personhood, then it would be a different story. Okay? It wouldn't be you being ejected, it would be them getting ejected because their practice is a result of eminent domain power. Eminent domain power are police powers, and police powers are the power to take. Okay? Not the power to convey, the power to take. Okay? So in order for you to and we know that the power to take on the police powers, which we know is fee simple absolute, okay, which has a future interest in that type of possession of interest in the state. That's called condition subsequent, which means that right of re-entry for the heirs or the owner, all right, whichever it is, okay, because heirs are the owners of the land. Very important to understand that. But by you not knowing the corporate powers, which is the law, the legislation created through the corporate body, either parliament under the corporate personhood, okay? That's the king, okay? Or king and his council. Very important to understand these terms. Let's continue.
Something of, coercion? Are you here of your own free will?
Definitely 100%. This is my calling. This is my purpose. This is what I was created to do. So yes.
So clearly that is the situation here in the so-called Kingdom of Kabbalah in Jedburgh in the Scottish borders. But if we take you over here, just this has been something of a journey. Just across the fence here is where this self-proclaimed African tribe had been living on private land. And through the legal wranglings, the legal process here in Scotland, eviction notices were sent and they were delivered, they were acted on. And essentially, the folk that you have just been seeing and hearing from switched across the fence onto this territory, which is the property of the local council. And we've been getting some reaction from the authority in the past few minutes.
So the local council.
We were obviously very relieved yesterday to get the news that we had.
So would be consider your freeholders or your commissioners upon the body politic that are formed over here in what we call North America. They'll call your freeholders or your commissioners, okay? These are those who have an estate in land, which is called a fee simple estate or fee simple absolute, okay? Very important that you understand that. Let's hear a little bit more.
Been granted the eviction order, so obviously we're looking to execute that in an appropriate manner. I think we have to be aware of what happened last time, where they moved simply to another piece of land. So we're obviously looking at this in a much more coordinated effort. They are clever and they know what they're doing.
So certainly the next steps from the council's perspective here in Jedburgh is to evict the people you see behind me from this land. The question is, where will they go next? Will this continue? Will the people head to neighbouring land? Well, certainly Sky News understands that conversations are being held with landowners surrounding here to try and prevent that from happening.
Okay. So this are the methods that are being used over in Europe, okay, Scotland, okay, in regards to their understanding of some called inheritance and an estate and land. An estate and land in regards to an inheritance is perpetual, okay? It's perpetual, so there is no statute of limitations involved with the conveyance or the transfer of land, which in the estate that's perpetual, okay? This type of estate will either be called Crown Lands of England or the Crown Lands of France. We're talking about all that today, okay? Very important. So this is a group from Africa called the King of Kubala. First of all, that's not going to match up with the laws governing the, what we call the corporate personhood of the corporate body under the corporate powers that are now being used in the land, what we now call Scotland, okay? Very important to understand that. Let's go to another group. All right, this is another group over in Europe, okay? He came to be the King of England. He goes by the name Lord Lancelot. Lord Lancelot, okay? Let's check him out.
Of England and Charles is so, because it's in my blood. You could find it in Westminster Abbey. I am trying to tell the king that, and I've made sure I'm trying to tell the king that. No, this is the time. It is the time. There's no other time.
I hear me now.
There's no other time.
Listen me, Lance.
No, this is when people are dying, and you're saying this ain't the time. When's gonna be the time? Do everyone die?
I've heard you make that point a number of times. Here's what I suggest. Here's what I'm suggesting.
You let them come. That's the whole point. Because again, this has to be examined. This is for real. Again, us as children, it should be the only one that should be in Parliament, because this is written in the House of Lords Presidency Act 1539 that we the children are the only one that's supposed to be sitting in Parliament. And yet there's foreign MPs, again, foreign government and foreign everything. Unfair, because all of the other people, they're uncovered.
Again.
I'm more in right of the King of England than Charles is so, because it's in my blood. You could find it in Westminster Abbey. I am trying to tell the king that, and I've made sure I'm trying to tell the king that. No, this is the time. It is the time. There's no other time.
I hear me now.
There's no other time.
Listen me.
No, this is where people are dying and you're saying this ain't the time. When gonna be the time? Do everyone die?
I've heard you make that point a number of times there. Here's what I suggest. Here's what I'm suggesting.
You let them come, that's the whole point. Because again, this has to be examined. This is for real. Again, us as children, it should be the only one that should be in Parliament because this is written in the House of Lords Presidency Act 1539 that we the children are the only one that's supposed to be sitting in Parliament. And yet there's foreign MPs, again, foreign government and foreign everything. Unfair because all of the other people, they're unfair. I'm more in right of the King of England than Charles is so, because it's in my blood. You could find it in Westminster Abbey.
So it's very, very important to understand that the people you see here talking are not here in North America. Okay? They're not here in North America. They're over in Europe, making claims not as the Scottish kings, not as the British kings, but as English kings, okay, in regards to an inheritance that they so-called have a right to, which is a perpetual inheritance, okay? But they don't realize that the power of the legal fiction changes the reality of what was there prior to that legal fiction being created. What was there prior to that legal fiction being created, which you call fiction, not real, accepted as a fact in law for legal purposes, is why these Africans are making claims but have not established law and fact to substantiate the claim of so that law in lieu of the conveyance, which we call operation of law, can take effect. Okay? Very important because there's a gap in the legislative law. There's a gap in the legislative legislation. There's a gap in the history in regards to the English people that they're claiming, or the English tenure that they're claiming to have a right to. Okay? Very, very important to understand that. All right? This is why the legal fiction was created. All right? So let's get it. We're talking about corporate personhood, corporate body, and corporate powers. Okay, that's all we're talking about. Corporations, all right? Legal fictions. Because slavery was caused by a legal fiction. So freedom will come through a legal fiction. We know a legal fiction is something that's false, but accepted as a fact based upon its legal agenda or its legal purpose, okay? Very important. It says here, even before the Norman Conquest, you know, the Norman Conquest was with William the Conqueror, who invaded England in 1066, okay? Very important. I'm going to show you that when you pierce the corporate veil, all right, or you lift the corporate veil, we got two realities or multiple realities existing at the same time as a result of legal fictions. I'm not concerned about everybody else fictions that might not be legal, because if it's not a legal fiction, then there's some legal presumption of the fiction, okay, which can be proven wrong, okay, if it doesn't fall within the parameters of the law, okay? So it says, even before the Norman Conquest, remember, legal fiction, conquest, what was the other one? Legal fiction, conquest, divine right of kings, parliament, and there was another one. Parliament or voting, okay? Right of suffrage, okay? There's the 4 ways to succession: a legal fiction, conquest, divine right of kings, right of kings, right of suffrage, and act of parliament or act of legislation. We didn't use the latter. We used the legal fiction to do our bidding. Why? Because this was created by our ancestors to protect from disfranchisement or what we call disfragmentation. Okay? Even before Norman conquest, before William the Conqueror invaded England, there was a strong tradition of landholding in Anglo-Saxon law. This was called folk right, my brothers and sisters. The founding fathers took the practice of folk right. Folk right goes back to Fulk V, father of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, whose son was Henry II, whose son was John, whose grandchildren were John, Richard I, Henry III, who descendants were Edward I, Edward II, and Edward III. These are all our paternal ancestors that we look to, all right, who created the legal fiction to keep the estate intact, okay? Very important. But even before the Norman conquest, there was a strong tradition of land holdings in Anglo-Saxon law. When William the Conqueror asserted sovereignty, it wasn't sovereignty passed down by primogeniture because he chose the right of what we call conquest, okay? Primogeniture was abandoned, so the only way primogeniture can come about again is by creation through a legal fiction, okay? So when William the Conqueror asserted the sovereignty over England in 1066, he confiscated the property under of the recalcitrant English landowners. Recalcitrant means those who oppose the conquest. Those who oppose the conquest. That was us, brothers and sisters. We're still opposing the conquest of English soil. You're standing on it. Over the next dozen years, he granted land to his lords and to his dispossessed and to the dispossessed Englishman, or affirmed their existing landholdings in exchange for fealty and promises of military and other services. This is under what we call feudal law. Feudal law. You got tenure lands and feudal lands. Feudal lands came in with William the Conqueror, conquered England, which at that time was under tenure land, under what we call folk right, okay, which was allodial land, okay? Allodial land was held in folk right until it was conquered by William the Conqueror, okay, in 1066, okay? Very important to understand that. Over the next dozen years, he granted land to his lords and to the dispossessed Englishmen. You hear that? Everyone want to be Englishmen, but not living based upon the English customs and traditions. You still call yourself the king of Kabbalah. The other brother called himself Lord Lancelot, okay? But don't know a thing about the agnatic succession or the process based upon how the inheritance was supposed to be conveyed. Okay? Hold that thought. So the dispossessed Englishmen or affirmed their existing landholdings in exchange for fealty and promised the military and other services. At the time of the Doomsday Book, the Doomsday Book is called the Book of Judgment, okay? The Book of Judgment, which is what we call Anglo-Saxon land law, okay? All land in England was held by someone, and from that time, there has been no allodial land in England. So land was always held by someone, all right, as a result of what William the Conqueror did, which was based upon feudal land tenure, feudalism, bastard feudalism, or what we call feudal obligations. That has been abolished, okay? Very important. In order to abolish this, our ancestors have put in place a term called a juristic person or an artificial person or a legal fiction. Why? Because it says here, in order to legitimize the notion of the crown's paramount lordship, a legal fiction that all land titles were held by the king's subjects as a result of a royal grant, and it was adopted. Okay, we know a royal grant is the corporate powers. Okay, the royal grant is the corporate powers of a corporation. And a corporation has a corporate personhood, a corporate body, which administers the corporate powers that derive from what? The sovereign grant. Okay? So if you didn't get this grant from a sovereign, then there's no way you can, in fact, call yourself a sovereign. There is a legal presumption of your sovereignty. Okay? As a result of you are not created a legal fiction lawfully, which is supposed to become, as we just said, through a grant. Through a grant. Very important to understand that. We'll come back to this land tenure, but we know right here it says, in order to legitimize the notion of the crown's paramount lordship, a legal fiction that all land titles were held by the king's subjects as a royal grant, and it was adopted. This is called crown land, where the king personifies the crown as the monarch. Why? Because the estate, that's perpetual inheritance, cannot be separate from the crown. Even if the king's not there, it cannot be severed. That's why it's called mortmain, a dead pledge. Statutes of mortmain means a dead pledge. Let's look at it. Crown land. Crown land, also known as a royal domain, is a territorial area belonging to the monarch. You hear that? Belonging to the monarch, who personifies the crown. There must be a personification. Personification is what we call incarnate, what you call incarnation, and is what we call incorporation. To incorporate the corporate powers under the corporate body, under the corporate person that was called the king, okay, or the monarch. It says crown land, also known as royal domain, is a territorial area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown. It is equivalent of a entailed estate. You got two types of estate, entail and fee simple. Write that down. If you're an heir, it's entail. If you're not an heir, then it's fee simple. And pretty much majority of the properties owned in what we call North America or anywhere around the world is based upon fee simple estates. Okay? Why? Because it's a defeasible estate, not indefeasible, meaning that there's not a clear chain of title. There's not a clear chain of title. So crown land, also known as royal domain, I'm not just talking, I'm showing you, is a territory area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown. It is equivalent of an entail estate and passes with the monarchy being inseparable from it. So in order for the entail estate, which is the crown, which is separate from the monarch, a legal fiction had to be created. A legal fiction had to be created, my brothers and sisters. How I know it? Let's look at the crown. We can click right here. Watch where I go with this. The crown. If the monarch personifies the crown and is an entail estate, which is inseparable from the monarch because he makes it up. He makes it up. The crown is a political concept used in the Commonwealth realms, analogous to the concept of the state and legal system. They got that word legal, influenced by Roman civil law. That is, in fact, a lie. Because Rome got their own corporate personhood, their own corporate body, and their own corporate laws. Very important to understand that. All right? So we got two realities operating at the same time. Hence, piercing the corporate veil or lifting the corporate veil. If you can't have powers and you can't have a corporate body with a corporate head, without a corporate head, because without the body, without the head, the body will fall. Okay? English common law never developed a concept of a state and left supreme executive power with who? The king. The concept, the idea, the understanding, or the origin of the crown as a corporation soul. You hear that? Key word. As a corporation soul, developed in the Kingdom of England as a separation of the physical crown. Physical crown. And property, the physical body. Because it said slavery was caused by legal fiction, and through corporate personhood, property became persons, i.e., corporate persons. Okay, we know there's only two types of corporations: corporation sole and corporation aggregate. A corporation sole is occupied by what? One natural persons, and as the corporate personhood under the corporate body, his corporate powers can create and successors. Okay. A part of that corporate body under the jurisdiction of the corporate head, which is a legal fiction accepted as a fact that cannot be challenged in any court of law unless there's a legal presumption about that legal fiction that can be challenged as a result of the other person that's challenging the presumptibility about the legal fiction is in fact a legal fiction. And the legal fiction, as we understand it, it goes all the way back to our ancestors, okay, and exists through time immemorial, perpetual successorship of property that's personified and entailed by the king, because entail is an estate that belongs to heirs, okay. It only belongs to heirs. So English common law never developed a concept of the state. It left supreme executive power. Executive power. You hear that, brothers and sisters? Not legislative, but executive power. The executive power is the ability to execute the power created by who? The legislative branch. Okay, that's Congress. That's the body. Okay. In order, when the body creates those legislative, then it is encoded, and that becomes the corporate powers. Okay, the statutes and the codes and the ordinance, etc. The concept of the corporation soul developed in the Kingdom of England as the separation of the physical crown and property of the kingdom from the personal property of the monarch. Then it spread through English and later British colonization, becoming embedded in the legal lexicon of the British Dominion. Did you hear that? So we see the origin where it comes from. As the Dominions gained control over the royal prerogatives in 1930, the concept evolved such as the crown and right of each rim and territory act independently of other rims and territory. This is very important. Why? Where I'm about to go here. The concept of the crown. What is the concept of the crown? Listen, y'all. The crown also represents the legal embodiment of the executive, legislative, and judicial governance. While the crown legal personality, okay, a legal personality is usually regarded as what? A corporation soul. It can, at least for such purposes, be described as a corporation aggregate headed by the monarch. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? It said it's described as a corporate aggregate because the corporate aggregate represents the corporate body. Okay? The body cannot stand without the corporate head, which is the corporation soul, which is the crown, under the guidance of the minor, because the crown is just legal fiction created for the maintaining of the so-called property that cannot be disfranchised or what we call disfragmented. Okay, very important to understand that. History. Let's go to it. The concept of the crown took form under the feudal system, and when you're talking about feudal system, you're going to William the Conqueror. Though not used this way in all countries that had the system, in England, all rights and privileges were ultimately bestowed by the ruler. Land, for instance, was granted by the crown to lords in exchange for feudal services, and they in turn granted the land to lesser lords. This is through what we call substitution or through substitution. When you do it through substitution, you don't break the laws of our ancestors in lieu of their donations, conditions of us and Queen of Pretoria. If you do it by substitution, then you violate the laws of entail estate, because we say crown land was an entail estate. Entail estates were protected by the Legislation Act of their donors, conditions of us, which says that you cannot transfer land to an alien. It must be conveyed to the heir by operation of law. If there is no heir, then it automatically streets to what? The crown for want of an heir. Okay? This is called escheatment. The concept of the crown took form on the feudal system, though not used this way in all countries that had the system. In England, all rights and privileges were ultimately bestowed by who? The ruler, the sovereign, Lord Paramount. We know in order for the Lord Paramount to be created, a legal fiction had to be put in place. For instance, it was granted by the land, for instance, was granted by the crown to lords in exchange for feudal services, and they in turn granted the land to lesser lords. One exception to this was common soakers. Owners of land held as soakers held is subject only to who? The crown. When such land become ownerless, meaning that if there was no heir, then that land will what? Escheat back to who? The crown. Why? Because the king or the crown personifies the crown. Okay, or crown land, because crown land is entail land. When there is no heirs, and then it won't fall under entail, it will fall under what we call escheatment. Okay, so it won't fall under escheatment, it will fall on what we call eminent domain power. Eminent domain power only results in what we call bona vacantia, abandoned property. Okay, so as we can see, free and common soakage is what's given to the crown and lieu for want of an heir, because if it's not being used by an heir, it's being used by somebody, and if it's being used by somebody, then must be some type of common soakage coming in. Okay, for the use of that property, this is what we call land use, land management. We're going to talk about that as well. Okay, so once again, the crown is also known as a corporation soul. Okay, the body of the crown, i.e., the corporation soul, is a corporation aggregate. I'm not saying it. This is what it just said. Okay. Okay. Each Commonwealth framed the term the crown at its broadest means the government or the polity known as the state, while the sovereign in all realms is the living, you hear that, y'all? Is the living embodiment of the state or symbolic personification of the crown. Y'all better listen. This is called the king's two bodies. The body of the reigning sovereign thus holds two distinct persons in constant coexistence, an ancient theory of what? The king's two bodies, the body natural and the body corporate. Okay? The body natural is subject to infirmities and death, like physical beings, and the body politic, i.e., the legal fiction, which never dies. The crowns and the sovereignty are conceptible divisibly, but legally indivisible, brothers and sisters. Indivisible. You need to understand what's at stake. What's at stake? Just read this one part one more time before I move on. The crown also represents the legal embodiment of the executive, legislative, and judicial governance. While the crown's legal personality is usually regarded as a corporation soul, it can, at least for some purposes, be described as a corporation aggregate headed by the minor. Okay? Very important for you to comprehend that. With that, let's go into some more. That's the crown. Let's look at we looked up crown land. So crown land, as we just read, everybody write it down. Crown land, also known as royal domain, is a territorial area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown. All right? It is equivalent of a entail estate and passes with the monarchy being inseparable from it. All right? It passes with the monarchy being inseparable from it. This is called escheatment, inquisition post mortem. Inquisition post mortem. Very important to comprehend what I'm saying. Since we talk about the crown land of England, let's talk about the crown land of France because it has everything to do with the argument we have today. Okay? Because when through marriage, the corporate personhood, the corporate body, and the corporate powers became one. And it was not under police powers, my brothers and sisters. We didn't take stuff. We conveyed it lawfully. Okay? We didn't need right of conquest. We didn't need to be called on the divine rights of kings. We didn't have to pass legislation. We didn't have to vote. Okay? We created the operation of law for the proper conveyance. It's right here in the statute. A legal fiction. That's the corporate powers. The only reason why the powers is not being used because the corporate body is not there and the corporate personhood is not there. That's why the corporate powers has been abandoned. Okay, it's called Bona Baker Tina, abandoned property. Let's look at it. Crown lands of France mean the same thing as crown lands in England. The crown lands, crown estates, or royal domain, or royal demise, however you want to say it, of France were lands, fiefs, and directly possessed by the kings of France. We're going to stop right there, go to the next paragraph. In the 10th and 11th century, the first capitans, while being the kings of France, were among the least powerful of the greatest feudal lords of France in terms of territory possessed. When we talk about the Capitan dynasty, we're talking about northern Frankish descendants, which William the Conqueror was in fact one of. Though he was in fact dark-skinned, as some say, all right, nonetheless, he was of a Viking Nordic barbarian, okay? Very important to understand that, all right? In the 10th and 11th century, the first capitans, while being kings of France, were among the least powerful of the great feudal lords of France in terms of territory possessed. Basically, through the use of feudal law, and particularly the confiscation of fiefs from rebellious vassals, conquest, annexation, skillful marriages with heiresses of large fiefs, and even by purchase, the kings of France were able to increase the royal domain. You hear that, brothers and sisters? Very important because you got to go back to the first conflict. This was called the 100-Year Wars. The first 100-Year War. The first 100-Year Wars landed to the 100-Year Wars, which was the result of what we call the War of the Roses. Okay? The War of the Roses was started because of Queen Victoria's law passed by Edward III against substitution of land that belongs to heirs that was heirs by entail estates. Very important you comprehend what the king is saying. Let's look at it. I'm going to take y'all by the hand. By the hand, brothers and sisters. All right, let's go here. Let's go through these terms a little bit more so that you understand. Examples of legal fictions. What does it mean for a legal fiction to fill a legislative gap or a legislative law or a law? A gap in a law or a gap in the legislation? What does this mean? Let's look it up. The legal fiction of filling a legislative gap is a judicial tool that allows courts to decide cases where existing laws is silent, okay? Unclear or out of date. Let me give you an example. We have Title 52 of New Jersey Revised Statute, and we have Title 46 of New Jersey Revised Statute. They don't use Title 46 of New Jersey Revised Statute because it's the powers or the corporate powers of a corporate body under a different corporate personhood versus their corporate powers under a corporate body under a different corporate personhood. So therefore, there's a legislative gap as a result of the silence of the existing laws that's unclear or out of date, meaning that they're not being used. It is a deliberate assumption of something as true, even it is factually untrue, to achieve a fair and practical legal outcome without violating what? The letter of the law. Y'all don't hear me. Y'all don't hear me. We're talking about the power of a legal fiction, okay? Not something that's fictitious and using that fictitious power to by way of what we call right of conquest or the right of divine kings or by way of some right of suffrage or by way of some right of active legislation. We're talking about a legal fiction created in law that's presumed to be under the laws of assumption to be a fact and cannot be challenged even if it's found even based upon its falsity. Okay? So even based upon the falsity, it cannot be rebutted because it's been accepted as a fact in law. Okay? So legal fictions of filling a legislative gap is a judicial tool that allows courts to decide cases where existing laws are decided, unclear, or out of date. It is a deliberate assumption of something as true, even if it's factually untrue. Okay? To achieve a fair and practical legal outcome without violating the letter of the law. So this is the power of a legal fiction, brothers and sisters. Let's see. A known falsehood. Key aspects of this legal concept. A known falsehood. The court intentionally and transparently acts as if a certain fact is true, even though it knows it isn't. But once again, the court intentionally and transparently acts as if a certain fact is true, even though it knows it isn't. Unlike lying or fraud, the fiction is not meant to deceive, but to create a bridge between the literal text of the law and a just or efficient result. Did you hear that? How many of y'all comprehend what this is saying? A court intentionally and transparently acts as a certain fact is true, even though they know it ain't true. So they know it's not like you lying or committing fraud on the court. They accept the unfact as a fact. Okay? They accept the untruth as truth. Okay? As a result of the legal principle that is based upon. So if you have a fictitious story or a fictitious reference, it better have some legal grounds. Okay? It better have some legal grounds that the court will recognize as a fact in law. Okay? To create a bridge, the gap in the legislative history, or a gap in the law, or a gap in the history, and usually history must have law and legislation. Okay? So once again, a known falsehood, the court intentionally and transparently acts as a certain fact is true, even though they know it isn't, meaning that they accept the falsity upon its face. Unlike lying or fraud, the fiction is not meant to deceive, but to create a bridge between the literal text of the law and a just and efficient result. This is the reason why we incorporated under the statutes of Title 46 and 16 and Title 16 of revised statute, and not Title 52 or Title 14. Okay, that's why we did it. All right, because their corporate powers are not our corporate body powers. Their corporate body is not our corporate body. Their corporate personhood is not our corporate personhood. Okay, because anytime the house, a house divided amongst itself cannot stand. Okay, what else? Jurisdiction. Judicial adaptation. Rather than asking the legislature to pass a new law or being forced to render an unjust decision, a judge can invent, you hear that? Invent a factual premises that allows an existing rule to be applied in a new way. What is the title of this lecture? Slavery was caused by a legal fiction, then freedom must come through what? A legal fiction. Why? Because rather than asking the legislature to pass a new law to free our asses or being forced to render an unjust decision, a judge cannot invent a factual premises that allows an existing rule to be applied in a new way, okay? Through the legal fiction. Operates within the law's language. Let's read that. The goal is to produce a reasonable result while leaving the original wording of the law unchanged. This helps maintain the stability, consistency of the legal framework. Once again, in their body of politics, under their corporate personhood, they can't talk about the corporate powers of the king. Okay? They can't do it. All right? Why? Because it brings about some legal presumption at law based upon the authority they claim to have in regards to their fiction. Okay? Their fiction. Okay? It does not bring an equitable result based upon the existence of their fiction, because when the crown was created, it was created as a legal fiction, okay? Accepted as a fact at law, even though we know it's not fiction. Why? Because we got statutes and we got case law to support this fiction that was passed by nonfiction beings, okay? Very important to understand that. What else? All right, let's go here. Legal fiction. We're going to talk about this, y'all. A legal fiction is a construct used in law where a thing is taken to be true which is not in fact true in order to achieve an outcome. Legal fictions being employed by the court or found in legislation. Legal fictions are different from legal presumption, which assumes a certain state of facts until the opposite is proved, such as a presumption of what everybody said, legitimacy. Okay? So legal fiction is something taken as a fact versus legal presumption at law, meaning something can be assumed illegitimate if it's proven to be so. Okay? Very, very, very important for us to understand that. All right. So let's prove this. Let's prove this. Let's see what the law has to say about it. Let's go ahead first. Legal fiction versus legal presumption. Knowing what you know now. Okay, knowing what you know now from your king. Now understanding about corporate personhood, corporate body, and corporate powers. Okay? Corporate personhood, corporate body, corporate powers. All the descriptions of legal fiction. Okay? A legal fiction. A legal fiction has a corporate body, corporate powers, and corporate personhood. We know that it said that the crown, as corporation sole, had a corporate personhood, which was called a natural person, and a corporate body, which was a corporate aggregate. Okay? So as we see here, under New Jersey's Provincial Council, which is the corporate body under the corporate personhood, brothers and sisters, under the corporate personhood, which established the corporate powers. Okay? New Jersey Provincial Council. We ain't looking at natural people right now. We're looking at juristic persons, okay, who make up the corporate body, okay, exercise the corporate powers. In fact, will be not police powers. That don't come till later, okay? It says His Majesty, not Her Majesty, but His Majesty, okay? Council, once again. And it says His Majesty, not Her Majesty. You know, the last queen here, all right, was Queen Anne. All right, was Queen Anne. His Majesty's Council for the Province of New Jersey was the upper house of New Jersey's legislature under colonial rule until it was replaced by the New Jersey Legislative Council under New Jersey's Constitution of 1776. This is a new creation of a legal fiction under a corporate personhood, under a corporate body with corporate powers, okay? Which is corporate powers are police powers, okay? Very important. The history of the legal fiction prior to the legal assumption of the legal fiction that exists now. Because legal fiction do what? Creates your reality, okay? From 1776 to 2025, what we see in reality was a result of their legal fiction. They created that. So what was there prior to the creation of this reality that we see that was created by their legal fiction? Corporate person, corporate body, under the corporate powers, which is the power to take property. And the title of this lesson is what? Slavery was caused by legal fiction, then legal freedom was come to what? A legal fiction. And legal fiction is a corporate powers, corporate personhood with corporate powers. The first power that was there was the original power, was the power of the king or the monarch under the authority of the crown as a corporation sole, which was the fusion of government as the executive, legislative, and judicial power. We have it right here. The Provincial Council was established in 1702 upon the surrender of the properties of East Jersey and those of West Jersey of the right of government to Queen Anne. This would be George Carteret and John Berkeley. If we go to revised statute 46-3-1, it'll tell you that the feudal tenure brought in by William the Conqueror was expunged or dissolved at the time of George Carteret and John Berkeley with the charter given by Charles II to James Duke of York, and March 12, 1664. Okay, so when that was dissolved, all the corporate powers under the corporate body, under the corporate person of the crown was restored. Okay, was restored. How we know it? It says the instructions from that corporate personhood, which was Queen Anne, to the corporate aggregate, the corporate body, Viscount Cornbury, the first royal governor of New Jersey, outlined what a fusion of corporate powers, which allow for an overlap of the executive, legislative, and judicial authority. It provided for a bicameral legislative consisting of a council and general assembly. On December 3rd, 6, 1775, Governor William Franklin prorogued the New Jersey legislature until January 3rd, 1776, but it never met again. This is when our corporate personhood with the corporate body and our corporate powers was suppressed. It was not dissolved, it was suppressed. It's still here. The only thing they removed was the corporate personhood and the corporate body. They kept the corporate powers, though. Okay? They kept the power, though. We know that when we read United States versus One Kim Art, which we'll read before I close down this lesson. Okay? Very, very, very important for you to understand that. Right? We're talking about New Jersey. Okay? We're talking about New Jersey. Now, this is in 1702 to 1776. It was overthrown, proper word, overthrown, okay? And it exists as it exists now in 2025, okay? In 2025. The corporate powers, the corporate body, the corporate personhood exists within the state as well as any other state, also exists in the federal government because that corporate power, police powers, is what they call their sovereignty, okay? Which really belongs to you, the people. It belongs to you. The corporate powers belongs to you, but you outside of the corporate body under the corporate personhood. Because what's the title of the lesson? Slavery was caused by legal fiction, then freedom must be caused by legal fiction, okay? It ain't gonna be no natural person coming to save you, y'all. Based upon an office of a natural person as seen today, because they won't allow it. They won't allow a natural person to sit in their corporate body, under their corporate powers, under their corporate personhood, to free us. That was the whole intent of the 14th Amendment, under that corporate personhood, that corporate body, and those corporate powers. That was the power to free us, okay? Life, liberty, and property, and due process of law. We see that in New Jersey's Constitution. That was stolen from you from the corporate personhood or the corporate body and the police powers, which is the corporate powers of New Jersey, by way of that Constitution. And it is spread like wildflower. How I know it? Just look at it. New Jersey revised statute. We know statutes are derived from or coded from legislation, okay? Based upon the power of the corporate body under the corporate personhood of the established legal fiction, okay? Or legal presumption that might have some illegitimacy if we can prove it, okay? Can we prove that the corporate personhood and the corporate body and the corporate power they have are a legal presumption at law? We don't have to prove it, they said it themselves. That it was a legal presumption means that it had some legitimacy until we can prove it was illegitimate. Well, let's prove it was in fact illegitimate. Let's look at it. If the Crown of New Jersey government as established by His Majesty, right? As established by His Majesty, let's go back to it. It said it was indefinite. The legal continuity of the corporate powers of the crown was indefinite. So if it was indefinite, that means the corporate body and the corporate personhood is indefinite as well. Because we know the crown is personified by the monarch, and that denotes the crown land, because the crown land is the monarch who personifies the crown, which is an intel estate that cannot be separated. Okay, as we just read. So if the list in terms of the authority of the crown is indefinite, that means that there was an indefinite legal continuity there in place. Okay, we must understand that. We know that it just said that that legal continuity that was in place stopped when they locked up the corporate body representative William Franklin, world governor. It stopped. The law they use, all right, the corporate bodies that were set up to minister the laws, all that stopped. Okay, very important for you to comprehend that. All right, why did it stop? Let's look at it right here. New Jersey revised statute, state government departments and officers. So we're not only talking about the corporate personhood, we're talking about the corporate body and their corporate powers. Okay? We're not talking about natural people right now, brothers and sisters. Not at all. State government departments and officers, certain seats in government, location of legislative session. All right, we know legislation is the corporate powers, all right, derived from the corporate body, either by the corporate body or the corporate personhood. Okay, corporate personhood will be your president or your governor or what we call chief in command. All right, as we can see here under the statute, Section 8, Trenton and the County of Mercer should be the seat of the government of the state. All sessions of the legislature should be held at Trenton or on a temporary basis for ceremonial, or commemorative purposes, or notwithstanding Section 1 of Public Law 1963, by reason of an emergency or other exigencies, as such other locations in the state as to be designated by the legislature by concurrent resolution. Okay? Why? But that must be construed to the Constitution. It says during Section C, during a period of emergency or exigency as determined by the governor pursuant to the laws of the state or by the legislature pursuant to the concurrent resolution, the legislature may use any technology or electronic means to conduct its business or otherwise carry out its purposes, or to comply with the requirements of paragraph 6 of Section 4 of Article 4, or for the purposes of ensuring the continuity of governmental operations of paragraph 4 of Section 4, Article 6 of the Constitution of the State of New Jersey. So we're talking about Article 4 of the New Jersey Constitution, which deals with the power of the legislation. Okay? Section 4 and Section 6, paragraph 4 and paragraph 6. Okay? Very important, because this determines the temporary power that the state of New Jersey, under the corporate powers, under the corporate body, under the corporate personhood, have. Okay? This power under New Jersey by statute Title 52 will not be there if it was not for Article 4 of New Jersey's Constitution. Just go there. Where is it at? Right here. New Jersey's Constitution, Article 4. Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4. And Article 4, Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 6, and Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. It's Article 4. All right. Article 4, legislative section. All right. Section 2. Section 4. Right here. Section 4, Paragraph 6. This deals with all bills and joint House resolutions. Okay? All bills and joint House resolutions. So when they created the new corporate body under the new corporate personhood with their corporate powers, it was through a bill or a joint resolution, which must be subject to supreme law of land under Article 6, because Article 5 deals with procurements, and Article 7 deals with ratifying, okay, bills and joint House resolutions, okay? So under New Jersey by statute, Title 52:2-1, and compliance to Article 4, Section 4, Section 4, Paragraph 6, all bills and joint resolutions should be read 3 times in each house before the final passage. So this deals with bills and joint House resolution, and the only way they can ensure the legal continuity of the government that's in practice at this time is do a bill or a joint House resolution. Okay, let's see it. Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4. Okay, we just read Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph. So we just read Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 6. Now we're going to go to Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4. Okay. Section 5, Section 6. Here. Section 4, Paragraph 6. But we're not going to just read Paragraph 6. Let's read the paragraph before we get to 6. Very important. Lawless deals with the police powers or corporate powers under the corporate body, under the corporate personhood of the state of New Jersey that we're talking about. Okay? All right? And how it was created by way of a bill or joint House resolution. Okay? To change the power that existed prior to the creation, which was based upon the corporate personhood, corporate body, and corporate power of the king. Okay? Very important. As a legal fiction that cannot be challenged in any court of law. Okay? So it says Section 4, Paragraph 1 of Section 4 of Article 4 of New Jersey's Constitution. Okay? It says any vacancy in the legislature occasioned by death, resignation, or otherwise should be filled by elections for the unexpired term only, as may be provided by law. Each house should direct a writ of election to fill any vacancies and its membership. But if the vacancy should occur during the recess of the legislature, the writ may be issued by the governor as may be provided by law. Number 2, each house should be the judge of the election, return and qualification of its own members, and majority of all its members should constitute a quorum to do business. but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Remember, we're talking about legal fictions in regards to succession. One was through a legal fiction, the other one was through what we call right of conquest, the other one was divine right of kings, the other one was through suffrage, and the other one through an act of legislation. Okay? None of them are using the legal fiction as a fact that can be contested at law. What they're using is a legal presumption that can be challenged at any time at law based upon its presumptuous, okay? Which I'm going to do. They're going to say it right here. You know, the government of New Jersey only functions under the revised statute Title 52, okay? And that must be construed to Article 4 of the Constitution and its sections and its paragraphs, okay? We read paragraph 6 of section 4 of Article 4, which deals with bills and joint house resolution based upon the legal continuity of the continuance of government under section 6, paragraph 4. Okay? I mean, paragraph 6. All right? Paragraph 6 is going to go into the legal continuity of that government that existed at that particular time. Let's see it. Okay, here we go. Yes, Article 4, Section 6. Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 6, right there. Let's make sure. Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 6. Let's go to Section 6, Paragraph 4. Section 5, Section 6. Now we're not just going to read Paragraph 4. We're going to read Paragraph 1, Paragraph 2, Paragraph 3, and Paragraph 4. Okay? Paragraph 1 of Section 4 of Paragraph 1 of Section 4 of Article 4 of the Georgia Constitution reads this. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the General Assembly, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. We're talking about Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 6, we deal with bills and joint house resolution. So now we're talking about Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 1. They're still talking about what? A bill or either a joint house resolution. In reference to what? Let's see, Section 2. The legislature may enact general laws under which municipalities other than counties may adopt zoning ordinances limiting and restricting to specified districts and regulating therein, building and structures according to their construction and the nature and extent of their use, and their nature and extent of uses of land. And the exercise of such authority should be deemed to be within the police powers of the state. Such laws should be subject to repeal or alteration by the legislature. So the power of the state of New Jersey under Title 52 of the revised statute is construed to Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 1, Paragraph 2, and Paragraph 3, as we're going to see, so. Yeah. Paragraph 1. Yeah. Please give me 1 second. Section 4, Article 1, all bills, Section 4, Paragraph 1. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the General Assembly, but the Senate may propose or concur with the amendment as on other bills. 2, the legislature may enact general laws under which municipalities other than counties may adopt zoning ordinances limiting and restricting to specified districts and regulating therein, building and structures according to their construction and the nature and extent of their use, and the nature and extent of the use of land, and the exercise of such authorities to be deemed to be within what? The police powers of the state. Such laws to be subject to repeal or alteration by the legislature. Then we have paragraph 3. Any agency or political subdivision of the state and any agency of a political subdivision thereof, which may be empowered to take or otherwise acquire what? Private property for any public highway, parkway, airport, place, improvement, or use may be authorized by law to take or otherwise acquire a fee simple absolute of any lesser interest, and may be authorized by law to take or otherwise acquire fee simple absolute and easement upon or the benefit of restriction upon abutting property to preserve and protect the public highway, parkway, airport, places, improvements, or use, but such taking should not be without just compensation. You hear that? Without just compensation. There's a section missing out of here. Paragraph missing out of here. Paragraph 4. Key takeaway here. Fee simple absolute. Okay? They were acquired under the police powers to take fee absolute property. Okay? Very important that we understand that. Under the police powers, which we know is the Fifth Amendment, to power to take. We know the Fifth Amendment is limited to the 14th Amendment. Okay? And the 14th Amendment was a result of an amendment to the Constitution, not a bill, not a joint house resolution, okay? But an amendment to the Constitution which changed the legal framework to the Constitution, okay? Not just of 1776, 1844, but the 1947 Constitution as well, okay? The 14th Amendment changed the legal framework of how we apply to those who are emancipated by that corporate personhood, that corporate body under those corporate powers, okay? Very important we understand that, because under the corporate powers we see here is police powers, which was the power under the corporate body, under the corporate personhood, which we know, according to United States versus Warren Kim Art, they stole our powers, okay? Which was not police powers, because it was the power of what? Intel, the power of inheritance. We must comprehend that. Just look at it, y'all. So we see the power of fee simple absolute is the power of disintel. What does disintel mean? Let's look at it. What does it mean to disintel? Disintel refers to the process of converting a fee tel into what? Fee simple. The majority of states have passed some form of disintelling statute. We've just seen it in the Constitution. Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4. Okay? Once again. And this was due to some temporary succession of political office or public office. A temporary succession of public office. All right? So we see disintel refers to the process of converting a fee tel into fee simple. This is through common recovery. Once again, common recovery. What does fee tel mean? Let's look at it. Fee tel. A fee tel is a common law interest in land, which is now abolished in most states. The owner of a land in fee tel is required to pass the land on to their children, who then may be required to pass it on to their children. This is an entail estate. All right. If the children aren't there, that means there are no heirs. If there are no heirs, it automatically cheats by way of what we call inquisition postmortem, and it goes to what? The king. Okay, because according to what State versus Elevator Company and State versus Older Elevator Company says that when the land is exceeded and there are no heirs, when land is allodial, the king is next heir when there is no kin. Okay, the king is next heir when there's no kin. Why we know? Because the king personifies the crown. Let's go back to crown land. Let's go back to crown land. You read it here. Crown land, also known as royal domain, is a territorial area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown. It is the equivalent of an entail estate and passive with the monarchy being acceptable from it. Did you hear that, y'all? Did you hear that? What is an entail estate? Let's look at it. You just read it. We're going to read it again. Fetail. In English common law, fetail or entail is a form of trust established by a deed or a settlement that restricts the sale of inheritance of an estate and real property and prevents the property from being sold, wasted, devised by a will, or otherwise alienated by the tenant in possession, and instead causes it to pass automatically and entirely by operation of law to an heir determined by the settlement deed. Okay? This is through the process of what we call library of season. So you don't have to go squatting. You don't have to claim it by divine right of kings. You don't have to do it by right of conquest. You don't have to do it by way of voting. You don't have to pass some legislation. The proper form of conveyance was created by the proper way to convey it was through a legal fiction of the king. Okay? The legal fiction of the king. We must understand that. Why? Because it's right here. On the Title 46. Title 46. These are our corporate powers. Okay? These are our corporate powers, brothers and sisters. Since William the Conqueror invaded England, they brought on feudal law. Okay? Feudal law were abolished on March 12th, 1664, which was a practice that extended from William the Conqueror all the way up to Charles II and Duke of York, when he gave grants to people who were not supposed to get those grants. But why? Because they were not heirs. Okay? They were not heirs. We must understand our corporate power. Not your power, but the king's power. Okay? Because as heirs, you don't exist no more. You run around being somebody else. This is the purpose of the legal fiction that fills gaps in legislative, gaps in the legislation, and gaps in the law. Okay? To be able to use that the existing law in a manner that without breaking the letter of the law. The reason they can use Title 46, according to the corporate body and the corporate powers and the corporate personnel that exist now, is because they exist as a legal presumption at law. Okay? They exist as a legal presumption at law, and that will continue to exist unless we can prove their illegitimacy. Okay? Until we can prove their illegitimacy. That's what I'm here to do. feudal tenure. We say feudal tenure, we're talking about feudal holdings. That goes into William the Conqueror. (1066). So from 1066 to March 12, 1664 is a gap in time. It's a gap in the reality that we as English people see, okay? It's a gap in reality as a result of these statutes that were created by a legal fiction, a corporate body under a corporate personhood, which was the king, all right? As a result of the corporate personhood, the corporate body that existed, the corporate powers lay dormant, which is the powers right here, all right? From William the Conqueror on up to the present day. There's a gap of that's missing, but the law is here. But the law can be applied as a result of the body of politics. You hear that? The body of politics missing under the corporate head. Okay? So the law or the corporate powers lie dormant. Why? Because there's a legal fiction under some legal presumption of legitimacy that's using these powers other than using these powers. And if they're not using it, then they're dissolving the powers. How we know it? Let's read it for ourselves. Hold that thought. And once again, we're not talking about natural people, all right? All right. We're not talking about natural people, we're talking about legal fictions at law, juristic persons, okay? All right. And let's just go back to it. Dealing with the land tenures that belong to us as heirs, okay? It says, even before Norman conquest, feudal laws, we just seen it right here. Feudal tenure is based upon feudal laws versus land tenures. You got a difference between land tenures and feudal tenure. Land tenure was the tenure held by folk right, which is how we held it under allodial possession, okay? Versus under feudal tenure, okay? So it says, even before the Norman conquest, there was a strong tradition of landholding in Anglo-Saxon law. When William the Conqueror asserted sovereignty over the England in 1066, he confiscated the property of the recalcitrant English landowners. So not only do we know that the English owned the land, but we tried to stop William the Conqueror from taking the land from us. Okay, the same power that William used was police powers, as the same police powers that New Jersey used. Okay, how we know it? Let's look at it. Look what one of their businesses had to say about New Jersey based upon that business being allowed to incorporate in New Jersey, okay? This is what they say. Matter of fact, I'm not going to make sure. Let's continue. Okay. So go ahead and say that William the Conqueror asserted sovereignty over England in 1066. He's confiscated property of the recalcitrant English landowners. Over the next dozen years, he granted land to his lords and to the dispossessed. Now we are dispossessed Englishmen, or affirmed their existing landholders in exchange for fealty and promise of military and other services. At the time of the Doomsday Book, all land in England was held by someone. And from that time, there had been no allodial land in England. From William the Conqueror on to the day, okay? From William the Conqueror to the present, there was no land, as they just said, allodial in England. In order to legitimize the notion of the crown's paramount lordship, a legal fiction, once again, a legal fiction that all land titles were held by the king subject as a result of a royal grant was adopted. So that means that the legal fiction under the corporate personhood, under the corporate body, with the corporate laws had to be established. Okay? It had to be established to fill that gap in the legislation and that gap in the law without breaking the letter of the law. Who was able to do that in the present day? No one has done that but your king. All right? Why? Because the corporate powers of the corporate bodies and the corporate personhood and the king is right here in the statute laying dormant. Okay? Going back to the feudal laws, as we just said, to William the Conqueror, all the way up till March 12, 1664, with a charter given from who? Charles II, the Duke of York, to George Colbert, to John Berkeley, who were the proprietors at that time, who surrendered the authority back to the corporate body, corporate personhood, under the corporate powers, under the crown, which was that, as they said, the authority was indefinite, meaning that there was a legal continuity existed that was indefinite. So that meant that the legal fiction, if it was a fiction, it was a fact in law that cannot be challenged. Why? Because the law says it. Okay? The law came from the legislation came from those who were able to create that legislation on behalf of the people. Okay? Very important that you understand that. All right? Let's see. So it said, in order to legitimize the notion of the crown's paramount lordship, a legal fiction that all land titles were held by the king's subject as a result of a royal grant was adopted. Okay? The royal grant was adopted. Now, where was I at a second ago? Let me just come here for a second. Let's go to the date. (1066). We always say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Okay? In the year 1066, you see an English read down year, but that year starts with who? William the Conqueror, or William the Bastard, in 1066. He set up this reality that we have today. Okay? Today for you is 2025. For us, it's 2975, which is equivalent to the Berber calendar. So in the year 1066, which was the beginning of the English week now year, which started with William the Conqueror and every so-called king who was sitting on the English throne from then on. Prior to that, the only people sitting on what they call the English throne were, in fact, Berbers. Berber calendar, which the year would have been in 1066, the year 2016. Okay? Very, very, very important to understand that the Anglo-Saxon body of politics under the corporate personhood were, in fact, Berbers. How we know it? Let's go to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica to prove it. Okay. I've shown this plenty of times, but I guess I'll show it again. Bear with me. Let my router is trying to load up. (1911) Encyclopedia Britannica, Berbers. Encyclopedia Britannica. We're talking about Berbers, okay? Right here, it says in 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, okay, according to Dr. R.G. Latham, who writes, all that is not Arabic in the Kingdom of Morocco. All that is not Arabic in French provinces of Algeria. All that is not Arabic in Tunis, Tripoli, and Fezzan is Berber. This explanation lies in the profound distinction of character. The Arab is a herdsman and a nomad. The Berber is an agriculturist and a townsman. The Arab has built his social structure on the Quran, which inculcates absolutism, aristocracy, theocracy. The Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism, is a democratic with his Jimna or Wittamant and his Qanun, the unwritten code, the Magna Carta, of the individual liberties as opposed to the community's good. Well, you must understand that Islam and Christianity came about at the same time. All right, they're all the theses supporting both of them originated about the same time. Okay, and at that time, the Anglo-Saxon history, culture, and customs were existing. Okay, very important. And we call ourselves Berbers. We didn't. They call themselves Berbers. The Wittemont, called Wittem, means wise counsel. They said were the Berbers. Okay, very important for you to understand, because we're talking about in 1066, okay? In 1066, when William the Conqueror invaded England, that started the first English Regnal year. Prior to that, the only Regnal years, and Regnal means related to kings, was Berbers, okay? So it was the Berbers who were the Anglo-Saxon descendants who were known as the barbarians, okay? Different type of barbarian, though. That's going to come in another lesson. For the sake of time, I can't talk about that, so let me continue on with my lesson I have here for you today. All right, so let's go back here. As we see, disentailment is to change fee tail into fee simple. Okay? Disentailment is to change entail or fee tail into fee simple. Okay, right here. Disentail refers to the process of converting fee tail into fee simple. The majority of states have passed some form of disentailing statute. We see that right here in New Jersey's Constitution. Right here. Right here. Fee simple absolute. Okay? Under the New Jersey's Constitution, Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 3, it talks about that they have the right to acquire private property under their police powers. That property, in fact, is called fee simple absolute. Okay? Fee simple absolute is right there in the Constitution. That contradicts Section Article 1. It violates Article 1. Because Article 1 is the same language that we have in the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment came before Article 1 of the 1947 Constitution. So it shows you that they changed our powers. Look at it. All persons are by nature free and independent and have certain natural and unalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying, defending life and liberty, or acquiring, possession, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. Prior to the 14th Amendment, you did not have that protection, okay? The only power that they had under the states was the eminent domain power under the Fifth Amendment was to take, and that was police power called their sovereign power. How we know that? You see it in Section 20 here. Let's go to Section 20 of Article 1. Right here. Private property should not be taken for public use without just compensation. Individuals or private corporations, specifically speaking, should not be authorized to take private property for public use without just compensation first made to their owners. Did you hear that? Okay? To their owners. So under New Jersey Revised Statute, Title 52, which deals with their government, their officers, the powers they have, all right, pursuant to Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 4, and Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 3, it clearly says that they have under their police powers the power of eminent domain with the power to take, the Fifth Amendment, okay? But if they take, they must compensate those who they took it from, i.e. the owners, okay? But how can you compensate when the owners is nowhere to be found, okay? They're nowhere to be found. That's because of the 14th Amendment. You not knowing the power of the 14th Amendment, okay? The 14th Amendment was incorporated to change the corporate person, the corporate body, and the corporate powers back to you, okay? Very important that you understand that. Let's look at it for ourselves. New Jersey Revised Statute, Title 52 is how they stole it. Right here. So this is a legal presumption at law, okay? A legal presumption at law in regards to the legitimacy of the state as a corporation, okay, based upon how it was founded, because it was created by a statute of New Jersey. The statute gave it life, and the reason why it gave it life was in the compliance to the legal continuity under Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4, to maintain the legal continuity of the police powers of the state of New Jersey. Do you understand that? That wasn't under Title 46. That meant that the corporate powers under Title 46 does not belong to them. Okay? Very important. So let's go to Title 46. First, let's say New Jersey. I thought I had it up here. I show receipts. It's loading, everyone. Just hold on for a second. This is a teacher manual from New Jersey Land Title Institute. And what they do is they teach a curriculum for licensed professionals in title insurance. Okay? So this is what they teach. Let's go to Section 2. of what they teach in their curriculum. I'll let Bob. Should be showing. Why it's not showing? Okay, here we go. You won't pay attention. Section 2. Okay, once again, we're talking about a corporate person, corporate body, corporate powers. Okay, all right. This is a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, I might add. All right, which teaches the curriculum of how to ensure effective fee simple estates. Okay, because they know that there's no clear chain of title going back to the original grantor. Okay. It says, because New Jersey was formerly a colony of the Crown of England, the history and development of our entire legal system, including our system of land ownership, has its roots in England. For our purposes, the development of land ownership began with the successful invasion of England by the Normans in the year 1066 under the leadership of William the Conqueror, King William I. William first introduced the feudal system in England. Feudalism is based on the concept that all land is held, whether immediately or mediately, by the sovereign. In other words, all land is owned by the king, and all other having an estate and interest in land ultimately derives their interest from the king. The king is a legal fiction. So if the state of New Jersey, which is incorporated as a legal fiction based upon a legal presumption at law until proven otherwise, was incorporated under New Jersey Revised Statute Title 52 and pursuant to New Jersey Revised pursuant to the Constitution of New Jersey, Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 4, Section 6, and Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4, dealing with the legal continuity of the police powers of the New Jersey's government pursuant to Title 52, which is temporary, I might add. And we know that the power that was there prior to that was the crown, which is said was indefinite. Okay, that meant that then there is a legal presumption of the legitimacy of New Jersey based upon what they just stated in Section 2, based upon historical background of feudalism in regards to New Jersey, because we know that legal fictions do what? Change reality. It changes the existing reality. Prior to 1776 to now, how do we know that what was existing under the Kingdom of England was here? All right, under their legal fiction. Okay, how do we know? Everything they said could be a lie, as we can prove it, because the statute says that the reality that was here prior to your creation under Title 52 and Article 4 of the Constitution was right here in New Jersey by Statute Title 46. Okay, right here, untouched, unblemished, left for all to see in regards to what New Jersey just submitted based upon their presumed legitimacy of the authority that they have as a corporate power, corporate body, and a corporate personhood. You don't have any power. Why? Because you just give it back to me. Why? Because we incorporated as a corporation soul. And the corporation soul, in fact, encompasses the king, the crown, the monarch, which is all the same. Okay? So they admitted that they overthrown the kingdom of England through the so-called legal fiction created by William the Conqueror under his corporate body, under his corporate power, which was known as police powers, known as what we call feudalism. Okay? From 1066 all the way up till March 12, 1664. Let's look at it in the revised statute. So that's the gap in the history, gap in the legislation, and gap in the statute that my legal fiction had to fix. Okay? We had to fix that. Let's go to the statute. Under New Jersey by Title 46, these are our corporate powers, okay? Our corporate powers. Why? Because the corporate powers that was under William the Conqueror all the way up till George Carteret and John Berkeley were dissolved, okay? They don't exist no more. So that meant that New Jersey's legitimacy now is in question because the power was transferred back to us based upon the intent of the legislation, which was now encoded in what we call the statute, which they can't touch it. All right, it's not their powers. The only reason why the power is dormant because the corporate body and the corporate person which has the ability to be able to execute the power. Okay. The Figurative Estates from March 12, 1664, dissolved and discharged and abolished all estates that were under feudal tingers under William the Conqueror. That meant that if that's the case, New Jersey don't have a right to any state because they inherited their estate and land interest in the legal system from who? William the Conqueror, as they stated. How we know it? Let's look at it. New Jersey by statute 4623-2. It says here, the tenures of honors and manors, lands, tenements, or of hereditaments, or of an estate of inheritance as a common law. An estate of inheritance is a perpetual inheritance. It's perpetual, held by who? Either the King of England or any other person or body of posses corporate. So it meant that corporate body, corporate person, and corporate powers was sitting there waiting to be incorporated and somebody who had the mindset to do so, okay? The only person that can have the mindset is the one who has the mindset of a king's consciousness, okay? The king's consciousness and knew how the king's body politics work. That means the corporate body, okay? We must understand that. We see right here in New Jersey's Constitution. Let's look at it. You go right here on New Jersey's court. Right here in New Jersey's court. I'm using this to bury them. You can't get no clearer than this. Virtual museum of notable cases concerning the common law. Right here. So let's click that. A PDF is going to pop up. New Jersey changed our reality through the creation of their legal presumption based upon their laws. Okay? come to my closing. It's loading up, brothers and sisters. Talk about corporate powers, corporate body, and corporate personhood. All right. That's what we're talking about. All right. So we're talking about, we just see the police powers that New Jersey's have under Article 4, Section 6, Paragraph 4. Paragraph 3, Paragraph 2, and Paragraph 1. Paragraph 4 clearly says that they have the right to temporary succession of public offices. I don't know why it's not in that Constitution, but it definitely should be there. But here we see on a PDF from New Jersey courts on a virtual museum about the innovations to the common law, okay? Not evolution to the common law, but innovations to the common law, okay? New Jersey's Constitution of 1947 Constitution created a court system capable of responding to the needs of New Jersey citizens and the change in our society. For more than 7 decades, New Jersey Supreme Court has gained recognition nationally among the state's highest court for its timely, prudent, and well-conceived innovations to what? The common law of England. Not their own common law, but the common law of England. When they created their own common law, that was the problem. The common law, like other judicial principles, derives out of court rulings resolving controversies presented to courts by people in search of solutions. Individuals and others ordinarily, with the help of lawyers, select the issue to present to the court. In effect, the common law resulted from judicial decisions resolving those issues case by case. So they go back to the origin of the common law based upon the law, corporate powers, based upon the corporate body and the corporate personhood. Let's see. As they established the 1947 Constitution, because this is what they're talking about. It says here, the origin of the common law of England and the innovations they made to the common law of England and their 1947 Constitution. So everything they talk about Article 4 is contradictory to the innovations made to the common law of England as we're reading. Because it said here, being one of the original 13 colonies, New Jersey has been strongly influenced by the English law and the Anglo-Saxon tradition. 3 branches of government enshrined in the United States Constitution and New Jersey's Constitution. We mentioned both of them are derived from English history. The king was the executive branch, that's one branch. Parliament, the legislative branch, that's the second branch. And the courts, the judicial branch, the third branch. So the 14th Amendment, under the reframing of the Constitution, through its amendment, established, did not incorporate the separation of powers, okay? It did not separate the corporation of powers as you see here in this PDF. But when you go to that Constitution, Article 3, you do see a separation of legislative power. Okay? But we read it here, it says, even though it was a separation of legislative power of the executive, judicial, and legislative, we see here it says the king. But you don't see it in the Constitution. Let's go there and see. Let's go there and see. I'll come back here. Article 3. Okay. Distribution of power, right here. This is the 1947 Constitution we're reading, right here. We just read Article 4. The article before that was Article 3. The powers of the government should be divided among 3 distinct branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial. No person or person belonging to or constitute one branch shall exercise any power properly belonging to either of the others, except as expressly provided in this Constitution. Okay, that's what we're reading here on the New Jersey website. When we go to the PDF, it says something totally different. Right? It said here, being one of the original 13 colonies, New Jersey has been strongly influenced by English law and Anglo-Saxon traditions. The 3 branches of government enshrined in the United States Constitution and New Jersey's Constitution, which we just read, are derived from English history. The king was the executive branch, parliament the legislative branch, and the courts, where is that? The judicial branch. It was in the English judiciary that the formal civilized system for resolving disputes and addressing crimes originated among English-speaking people. It was in the early courts in England that the common law took root and evolved into our current system of courts, judges, and juries. The common law we know it today dates back to the 12th, 13th century and derived from the reign of King Henry II, who appointed judges to resolve disputes amongst his subjects. That's very, very important based upon the 1947 Constitution, innovations to the common law of England, as they said, even though they had the separation of powers, the 3 branches of government, because the king was the executive branch, as it just stated, right? Now let's see where the confusion comes in. Let's look into the evolution of the common law. Right here. New Jersey celebrates and drives its diversity as a result that we have long been a place where competing visions, you hear it? Competing visions of America come into conflict. The vision of America before the competing visions in America was that going back to the origination of the common law, going back to the Anglo-Saxons, and they mentioned one king, King Henry II, son of Pope, ruler of Jerusalem. Okay, that's what they said. So now the problem comes with the evolution of that common law right here in New Jersey, because we know that in New Jersey in 1702, the crown was here and the authority of the crown was in fact indefinite, okay? Going all the way back to who? King Henry II, okay? Who still, his successor still got laws already in place in New Jersey, still intact, okay? So it said when competing visions of how England, now called America, come into place, it became a conflict of interest, okay? Nonetheless, in modern United States history has shown wherever America is going, New Jersey usually get there first. So New Jersey is the what? Root of the problem. They are the root of the problem, okay? We must understand that in regards to the origination of how what? The government or the state government was supposed to be functioning, okay? Was supposed to be functioning. And then it also says when competing visions of the role of what? State government. So not just the vision of how America was supposed to be, but the role of the state government was supposed to be. So it says that nonetheless, when New Jersey celebrates the drive of diversity, as a result, we have long been a place where competing visions, so everybody was competing on how America was supposed to be based upon how it originally was, which as we know was called England. When competing visions of the role of the state government in society have come into conflict. So it's all coming to conflict based upon competing visions on how the government and how the land was supposed to be ran. All right. And it said when competing visions of the role of state government in society had come to conflict, our courts, as a third branch of government, have been confronted with significant challenges. Sometimes, when rendered decisions too difficult to question, various observers have expressed concerns that our Supreme Court has been what? Too assertive. Why? Why have they been assertive? Why? It said, yet as noted by retired Supreme Court Justice Gary Stein, there are so many circumstances in which courts are required to act because what? The other branches of the government have not. Okay, so the reason why the court has stepped up is because the executive and the judicial branch, legislative, have not. Okay, based upon their conflicting views of how America and the state government is supposed to be ran, contrary to how the innovation of how America and the state government of New Jersey was supposed to be ran, based upon the 1947 Constitution, which is based upon the legal framework established under the 14th Amendment through a amendment, not a joint House resolution, nor a bill. Okay? Very important for us to comprehend what's going on and what's being taught today. Let's see. So with that, we go back to the statute. We know that feudal tenure were abolished under New Jersey Statute 46-3-1, right? So that means everything that New Jersey and William and Concord did, meaning that they both took the same route, has been abolished as a result of this statute here. All the inheritances under the common law, which were in perpetuity, held by the King of England, corporate personhood of the corporate body and their corporate powers, that was declared to be active when they dissolved the feudal government, okay? That was from George Carteret and John Berkeley going all the way back to William the Conqueror. How do we know that? Why? Because of this statute right here. I can tell the whole story by the statute. Just by this statute. Forces going through, that's 5. Right here. Now it's acting up. The revised statute forces going to do that's 5. Queen of Patoris. Right here. This statute right here, all right, in New Jersey revised statute, which is the corporate powers of the corporate body under the corporate personhood of a king, all right, which is this statute right here. The statute that you just see in New Jersey is the statute right here. Queen of Patoris is the statute passed all the way back in 1290 during the reign of Edward I, the grandson of Henry II, okay, that prevented tenants from alienating and transferring their land to others through some predation, okay? That statue is right here. Why is it there? Why? Because of this statue and the New Jersey Revised statute. Forces going to read that 6. All land is allodial. All land is allodial right here in the statute. Why is it allodial? Because it's supposed to go to an heir. If the heir is not there, then it automatically shoots back to the crown because the crown land is personified by the king. If the king can't convey it to an heir, as a result of him coming to age, then it must fall in what we call inquisition post-mortem, meaning that it's a dead pledge because all property remains a part of the crown. It's inseparable, okay? So first it's going to do that 6, the land remains allodial under what we call folk right. Folk right is a sort of property that we held in what we call land tenure by the Anglo-Saxon, okay? The Anglo-Saxon, which for the Berbers, okay? That's us, all right? In order for us to own it, it must be properly conveyed to you, not taken and then give it to you, okay? Very important. That's because of this statute right here. Base and tail. All right here in the statute, our corporate powers. In order for us to not be able to exercise our corporate powers, they had to abolish them. They don't have the power to abolish our laws because they're not their corporate powers. Okay? Right here. Whenever any conveyance, will, or instrument in writing shall hereafter be made, whereby any grantee, not the grantor, because the grantor will be the king, divides you or other persons should become seized in law or in equity of such estate in real estate as under the statute of 13 of Edward the First. Someone, same king who passed Queen Imperatrice that said you couldn't alienate land. Why? Because the land belongs to heirs under what we call the indulgence condition of the books. It's called the statute of entail, which means that you can't transfer to some or alienate it to someone who's not in the family. Okay? But now we see here the state's entail is abolished. We didn't abolish it. New Jersey did it as a legal fiction under some legal presumption that they had the authority to do so, and they did not. They didn't have the authority to do so. Why? Because this is a statute. They don't condition the bus. Why? The Donuts Conditional Bus Estates Entails Act of 1285. Did it say abolish up here? No. It's a chapter of English Statute Westminster 1285. So it was passed before Queen Imperatrice in 1290. That originated the law of entail forbidding a landholder to sell his land except to his heirs. Did you see that? It's right there in the statute. Just look at the background. A form of entail has been known before the Norman feudal law. William the Conqueror, you hear that? So entail has been known before the feudal land or feudal laws that were instituted by who? William the Conqueror. Did you hear that, brothers and sisters? Did you hear that? Right there. So what William the Conqueror did is the same thing that the state of New Jersey did. They changed entail to fee simple. Yes, they did. How we know it? They did it this way, brothers and sisters. Let me show you as I close out. What you're going to do, that's 9. Guarantees of usage. Police powers, it comes from land use or uses of land management, all right? Through eminent domain, not through lottery of season or the law of conveyance, all right? Conveyance and usage must be under what we call what? Lottery of season. Right here. Any other usage in customs, it's contrary, is notwithstanding. Do y'all see that? Sovereign lottery of season in possession and the usage custom to the contrary is notwithstanding. We must understand that. As a result of that, we have the right to what? Bring a claim. Right here. 46.3-10. Fines and recovery abolished. From after June 12, 1799, no fines and recovery that has been or should be entered, made, or have suffered in any court of record of the state to operate or be construed to be a conveyance or assurance of any real estate or any way bar a issue of entail or the reversion or remanagement of their lawful claims and entries. Any use of custom to the contrary is notwithstanding. It must be based upon lottery of season. Any other usage is notwithstanding. What is lottery of season? Let's go through it. No. Lottery of season. You seen it right there in the statute. Now I'm going to Wikipedia to verify it. And I'll pull that on that. You're not doing it this way, then you don't have a right to an inheritance. King of Kabbalah or Lord Lancelot, you're in for a rude awakening, my brother. Close now on this one. So if you don't get it here, you'll never get it. Seen the statute as our corporate powers cannot be activated without the corporate body and the corporate personhood. That's me. Lottery of the season. Lottery season is the archaic legal conveyance ceremony formerly practiced in feudal England and other countries following the English common law, used to convey holdings and property. The term lottery is closely related to, if not synonymous with the word or the term delivery. You hear that? Used in some jurisdictions in contract law or related to the law of deeds. There's only two varieties of this. It's lottery of deed and lottery of law. Okay? Lottery of deeds is how they do it now. Lottery of law is how we should be doing it. Okay? Which is the practice that you see in the statute. Okay? By sovereign lottery of law, by what we call under the proper form as what we call the twerk and thrift ceremony. Let's look at it before I close out. This ceremony goes back to Ashturton. Ashturton, the Anglo-Saxon kings, okay? If the conveyance is not done in the lottery season, then it automatically falls in what we call inquisition post-mortem, okay? Inquisition post-mortem in lottery season under the feudal system, all land belonged to the monarch and was therefore either held by him directly, the royal damsel, crown land, or on his behalf directly or indirectly. Those who held land directly of the king's behalf were known as tenants in chief. When a tenant in chief died without an heir in his land succeeded, it fell into what? The hands of the king. If there was an heir, the king kept the land until lottery of season took place. The heir paid a sum of money in the relief to take the lawfully assumed possession of that land. It was called lawful conveyance, okay? Lawful conveyance. That's how our ancestors did it. That's how we should do it, okay? The only way it can be done is by the king. So with that, I might do a part 2 tomorrow. I'm not sure. If not, it will be the day after. So with that, I'm going to greet you as I always have greeted you. And that is the spirit of our ancestors, the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. And I hope that you understand the importance of this lesson in regards to the legal fiction, okay? The legal fiction, because we know slavery was caused by legal fiction and freedom is going to come through a legal fiction. And legal fiction has some legitimacy at law based upon its falsity accepted as a fact, and as a result of that, it cannot be challenged versus legal presumption at law that has some type of legal presumption until challenged. Okay, and with that, I'm gonna greet you as I always greet you. That's in peace.